The rain was loud enough on the roof of my car that I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it, except I hadn't imagined it, and the proof was that I was still sitting in the driver's seat outside her building 7 minutes after I should have pulled away, staring at the road ahead like it owed me an explanation. She'd said it quietly. That was the thing. Not dramatically. Not the way people say things they want you to notice them saying. She'd said it the way someone says pass the salt, like it was a reasonable request, like the words carried no particular weight, like she said things like that to people all the time and had simply happened to say this one to me. Take me somewhere private. I'd had both hands on the wheel when she said it. 10 and 2. Proper grip. The kind of grip that suggests a man who is in control of his vehicle and, by extension, his life. I'd put on a playlist specifically calibrated for driving with passengers. Nothing too loud, nothing too intimate, nothing that would force either of us to have a feeling we hadn't agreed to have. I had, in other words, done everything right. And she had said 4 words into the middle of all that careful preparation, and the careful preparation had become completely irrelevant. She'd clarified a breath later. She'd explained what she meant. It didn't entirely help. I kept driving. That should have told me something. Before I go any further, if you're listening to this right now, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. These stories have been traveling further than I ever expected, and I genuinely want to know where they're landing. All right, back to it. My name is Cal Merritt. I'm 34. I work for a structural surveying firm called Hadley Associates, which operates out of an office above a dry cleaner on Pemberton Street, a road that has been described as up and coming in 3 separate property listings I've personally read in the last 18 months, which means it has been up and coming for approximately the entire time I've worked there, and shows no sign of arriving anywhere. My job, reduced to its plainest form, I go into buildings other people want to buy, sell, or insure, and I tell them what's actually wrong with those buildings. Hidden water damage. Failing lintels. Roof lines that have been quietly shifting for a decade while the occupants put up new curtains. I look beneath the surface at the structure holding everything up. I do this well. I do this with a patience and a precision that my former colleagues at the larger firm I worked at before described as, depending on their mood, either impressive or frustrating. I left that larger firm 2 years ago for reasons that were mostly professional but partially personal in the way most professional reasons are, if you dig far enough. I work with 4 other people now. The office is small. The coffee machine is broken in a way nobody has fully committed to fixing. I am, in every professional sense, exactly where I chose to be. My personal life is quieter. I was married. Dana. 4 years married, 6 years together. She was not unkind. I want to be precise about that because it matters. She was honest. Possibly more honest than either of us was ready for in our late 20s. We had the ending most people don't get. A long, civil conversation on a Sunday morning, both of us knowing what was being said, neither of us making it ugly. She has remarried since. I went to the wedding, which sounds painful and wasn't particularly. She said something to me on the day she moved her things out that I've thought about more than I'd probably admit. She said, "You read buildings for a living. You understand every hidden thing about a structure the moment you walk into it. You never once did that with us." She wasn't being cruel. She was being accurate. Not bitter about it, just honest. Not broken after it. Just careful. Careful in the way you get careful when you've discovered that the version of yourself you were running wasn't quite structurally sound either. Since then, a flat I've actually made livable. Plants that are alive. A bookshelf with books I've read. Tuesday and Thursday runs. Real cooking for nights a week. My friend Danny, who I've known since university, who calls when he needs to think out loud or when something has gone well and he wants to tell someone who'll understand why. Danny is chaotic and warm and reliable in the way chaotic people sometimes are. He shows up when it matters, every time, even if he can't find his keys. I was at Danny's house the evening all of this started. One of his irregular dinner parties, the kind with too many people in a kitchen that wasn't designed for more than 3, a roast that ran 90 minutes over, and a bottle of wine that turned into 4 without anyone deciding that. I was the last to leave. And at the door, shrugging on my jacket, Danny mentioned, casually, the way you mention something you assume won't be complicated, that his mum needed a lift back to the city. I said of course. I meant it simply. I had no idea how much that word was going to cost me, or how willing I'd eventually be to pay it. The night had turned properly cold by the time we got to my car. October cold, The specific kind that doesn't feel like a season changing so much as a door closing. The rain had been building since 9 o'clock and was now fully committed, coming down in the thin, relentless way that soaks you before you've registered you're getting wet. She walked to the passenger side without waiting to be shown to it. Opened the door, shifted her canvas bag from shoulder to lap with the brisk economy of someone long accustomed to managing without assistance, and had the seatbelt on before I'd finished adjusting the driver's seat. All of it done neatly, quietly, without commentary. I noticed that first. Before anything else, that self-sufficiency. The complete absence of performance. Her name was Nora. Nora Ford. She was Danny's mother. I'll let that sit for a moment because it needs to. Danny is 35. Nora had him young. She was in her early 20s, she'd mentioned once in passing, which puts her in her mid to late 50s now. But I'm giving you the numbers because numbers are what I have access to, not because they mean anything true about the person. The person was considerably more complicated than the numbers. What I knew about Nora Ford before that night, assembled over a decade and a half of being her son's friend and occasional presence at his family occasions, was specific and limited. She had been a secondary school art teacher for 31 years. She had retired early 2 years prior, under circumstances Danny referred to as she just decided in a tone that suggested he'd never fully understood the decision and hadn't pushed. She had a flat in the east of the city near the canal. She had been divorced from Danny's father since Danny was a teenager. She asked questions that seemed innocuous until you were 3 answers in and realized she'd taken you somewhere considerably more honest than you'd planned to go. Danny was, in the specific way adult children sometimes are with very perceptive parents, mildly anxious around her. Not because she was difficult, because she saw clearly. And most of us, if we're truthful, prefer to be seen slightly less clearly than we actually are. In the car, she looked out of the passenger window and said almost nothing. Not in an uncomfortable way. This is what I noticed second. The silence didn't need filling. She occupied it without broadcasting discomfort, without the usual small talk impulse that most people deploy in enclosed spaces with near strangers. She just was there. Present and quiet in a way that required nothing from me. Her hair was dark, grayer now than I remembered from the last time I'd seen her properly, maybe 2 years back at Danny's birthday. Cut simply without styling, just cut. Her hands were the detail that kept drawing my eye when I glanced over at the road checks. They were the hands of someone who made things. There was paint residue in the crease of her right thumb, a rust-brownish color, caught there the way paint catches in places soap doesn't quite reach. She had a small habit I caught twice in the first 20 minutes of driving. When something outside the window caught her attention, a lit shop front, a tree moving in the wind, something I couldn't always identify, her head tilted very slightly to the left. Not dramatically. Not even consciously, I thought. Just a small involuntary adjustment, the way a person leans slightly toward a sound they want to hear better. Like someone who still found the world worth attending to. She was Danny's mother. That is a category. It has rules the way a load-bearing wall has rules, not written anywhere, not discussed, simply structural. Remove them and things fall. The rules are, she is off limits. She is not a person you look at that way. She is not a person you find interesting in any direction that isn't straightforwardly polite. She is Danny's mom. That is the category, and the category is the end of the conversation. I knew the rules. I knew them clearly and completely, and I observed them, that first night, without difficulty, because it was a car ride and she was a quiet woman looking out of a rain-streaked window and I was simply driving. Nothing had happened yet. Nothing technically was happening. About 40 minutes in, somewhere on the long straight stretch before the city, my phone lit up on the dashboard cradle. Danny. I accepted on the display. His voice came through both speakers, too loud for the quiet of the car. You get her okay? Road's fine? We're fine, I said. 20 minutes out. Good. Good. A pause, the kind with something waiting behind it. She won't mention this herself, but she's had a rough stretch. The last couple months. So just, he seemed to weigh what came next. You know. From the passenger seat, a very small sound. Not a word. An exhale, barely audible, precisely controlled. The sound of someone managing not to say something. I kept my eyes on the road. Noted, I said. Flat and dry enough that Danny understood I was acknowledging without dwelling. Mum, you good? I'm fine, Daniel. The way she said it, not sharpened, not cold, just even, communicated everything a sharper delivery would have ruined. I'm fine meaning, I'm present, I heard you, I am not a topic. Right. Okay. Cal, I'll send money for petrol. You won't. Don't. I won't take it, Danny. A short silence. Then warmly, right? Yeah. Thanks, mate. The call ended. The car was quiet again. Just the rain in the road and the playlist I'd now turned down without noticing. I had a choice. I could acknowledge what Danny had said, flag the rough couple of months, invite her to fill the space, and make it awkward through good intentions. Or I could say nothing and let it pass, which was the sensible option, and which is what most people would have done. I did neither. After about 60 seconds I said, "You don't have to tell me anything." She turned from the window. I felt it rather than saw it, the shift of her attention landing on the side of my face. "But," I said, "if you wanted to. We've got about 15 minutes. I said it as plainly as I could. Not an invitation pressured into a corner. Just a door left ajar with no expectation attached to it. She was quiet for a moment. "My sister and I aren't speaking," she said. "I'm sorry." 9 weeks. That's a long time. It's the longest we've ever gone. Pause. We've never managed more than 3 before. I didn't say I'm sure it'll work out. I didn't offer perspective. I just drove and let the fact of it stand in the space between us at whatever size it actually was. "She thinks I made the wrong choice," Nora said. "Retiring. Did you?" She considered this seriously, which I noticed. She didn't dismiss the question or reach for a prepared answer. "I don't know yet," she said. "I haven't been retired long enough to know." That's more honest than most people would be. A small shift in my peripheral view. That slight tilt, head fractionally left. "Danny says you're good at your job," she said. "He says that to be kind." "Danny's many things," she said. "Kind is one of them. It doesn't mean he's wrong." "I try to be accurate," I said. "It's not always the same as being good." "No," she agreed. And then, "He says you notice things other people don't bother to look for." Something changed in the temperature of the car then, just slightly. The way a room changes when a window is open somewhere you can't see. "Structural things," I said. "And," she said. Which wasn't agreement or disagreement. We drove the last stretch in silence. When I pulled up outside her building, the rain was heavier, loud on the roof, loud on the pavement. She gathered her bag and reached for the door handle and paused. And said it. Quietly. As if the words were simply true and she was simply stating them. "Take me somewhere private." My hands tightened on the wheel at 10 and 2. Then she added, in the same quiet register with no change in tone, "There's a cafe on the next street. Used to be good. I haven't been in a while. I'm not ready to go up yet." She said not ready to go up yet the way people say it when an empty flat has become a thing they have to steel themselves for. Without performance. Just accurately. I reached over and turned the playlist off. "Show me where," I said. The cafe was exactly what she'd said, around the corner, still there, still itself. The kind of place that exists in defiance of everything a city does to places like it. Dark wood, warm light, a glass counter with things in it that had been there since morning, a smell of coffee and something baking in the back with cinnamon in it. The owner, a wide, unhurried woman, nodded at Nora from behind the counter in the way that meant she was a regular. Not the kind of regular who makes conversation. The kind who comes, sits, leaves and is trusted not to need managing. We took the table near the window. Rain on the glass, city light broken into orange and white threads and the water running down it. She ordered a pot of tea. I ordered coffee I didn't need. We waited for it to come and neither of us filled the wait. 31 years, I said when the drinks arrived. "And your sister thinks you gave up." "She thinks I ran," Nora said. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Giving up means you couldn't do it. Running means you chose not to." She poured tea without looking at her hands, the way you pour when you've done it 10,000 times. "She thinks choosing not to is cowardice." "What do you think?" "I think choosing not to is sometimes the most structurally sound decision you can make." She looked at me when she said structurally sound, not pointedly, just precisely. Like she'd chosen the word because it was accurate. I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup. The cup was warm. The cafe was warm. Outside, the rain kept doing what it was doing. "What are you doing with the time?" I asked. "Painting. A beat. Badly." "Who told you badly?" "I did." I was a competent art teacher. Competent at teaching and genuinely interested in art, which kept me going for 3 decades. But knowing what good is and being able to make it are different things. You taught people to make things. Yes. Which is its own skill. Not the same skill. She looked at the window. I'm finding out which one I actually have. Or whether I have either independently without the classroom to structure it. That's a brave thing to find out. She looked back at me. Or foolish. Can't it be both? A small pause. Then, yes. I suppose it can. We were quiet for a moment. The cafe moved slowly around us. Someone's cup set down, a chair shifted, the faint radio from the kitchen barely audible. Do you make anything? She asked. I make accurate assessments of load-bearing structures. That's not what I meant. I know. I cook. Nothing worth calling art. Everything worth calling art was made by someone who said that first, she said. Simply. Without flourish. It landed cleanly, not because she meant it as a compliment, but because she didn't mean it as one. She was just stating what she believed. I moved my coffee cup to the other side of the table. I did not examine why. How long since the divorce? She asked. I looked up. She held the question evenly, not prying, just asking. Danny mentioned it years ago, she added. I'm not asking for details. 3 years, I said. Does it still feel recent? Not the way it did. There's a shape to it, she said. First year everything reminds you of it. Second year it starts to feel like yours. Third year, she paused. I wouldn't know the third year firsthand. Mine was longer ago. I hadn't known she'd been divorced. Danny had mentioned the separation. Parents split when he was young, but I'd never had a detail attached to it. I'd assumed it was one of those family facts that lives in the background without needing a frame. How long? I asked. 18 years. Does it feel like yours? She held my gaze. Very much mine, she said. No qualification. No retrospective sadness attached to it. Just ownership. There was a pause. Then she said, Why did you ask Danny before you left the big firm? I frowned. What? He told me you called him when you were deciding about leaving. Talked it through for an hour. He said you were the only person who called before making that kind of decision rather than after. I wasn't asking permission, I said. No, she agreed. What were you doing? I thought about it. Thinking out loud. Danny's useful for that. He doesn't tell you what to do. He just asks the next question until you find your own way to the answer. She looked at her mug. I don't have anyone like that now. It was said without self-pity. Matter of fact, the way she said most things. Your sister? I said carefully. She used to be. Pause. Now when I make a decision she makes a comment. It's changed the frequency between us. Changed the frequency, I repeated. I like that. It was an accurate way to put it. We used to be tuned to the same thing, she said. Now there's interference. I didn't say I'm sure it'll resolve. I didn't say anything. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do with someone's honest statement is leave it where they put it. We stayed another 40 minutes in that cafe on the first night. We talked about the building I'd been surveying the previous week, a Victorian terrace where someone had removed a supporting wall to open up the downstairs and was now dealing with the consequences in the ceiling above. She found this interesting in the way someone finds interesting a problem that maps to something they're thinking about already. I could see her making the connection without her saying it. We talked about her students, not names but types. The ones who drew in the margins of every subject. The ones who'd been told they weren't creative and had believed it because a person in authority had said so. Did you ever convince any of them otherwise? I asked. Sometimes, she said. Not always. The ones told early enough that they had no talent, it's very hard to undo. The belief becomes load-bearing. She said load-bearing deliberately that time. I caught it. I see what you're doing, I said. Do you? She said without much expression. Using my vocabulary. I'm learning the language, she said. Professional hazard of talking to someone who does what you do. I looked at her. She was looking at the window. What's the professional hazard of talking to someone who does what you do? I asked. She thought about it. You become honest before you've planned to be, she said. That sat in the air between us like something with weight. I drove her home properly when we finally left. Pulled up to the building, left the engine running. She gathered her bag. Thank you, she said. For the detour. Anytime, I said. She got out, walked to the building door, put her key in the lock, and paused just for a second and looked back at the car. I couldn't read the look. I'm professionally trained to read what's behind the surface, and I could not read that look. I drove home. I thought about it. 3 weeks later, Danny texted to say his mum had a piece in a small group show, 4 local artists, a room above a picture framer in the east of the city. He was going for solidarity purposes, and did I want to come? I said yes before I thought about whether I should. The gallery was small and overheated and had the particular energy of events where people are using conversation to manage their anxiety about standing in a room looking at things and being seen looking at things. 30 people, plastic cups of white wine, someone's spaniel wandering between legs because galleries apparently now allow dogs. I found Nora's piece in under 2 minutes. It was medium-sized, maybe 60 by 80 centimeters. An interior scene. A kitchen window with rain against the glass and morning light coming through at a low angle. What stopped me was the light. Not the composition, not the color, the light itself. She had painted it the way it actually is, which sounds like a simple thing and is not. Most painters paint light as a symbol of something. As hope or warmth or significance. She'd painted it as a physical presence. Something with mass and direction and a specific time of day encoded in the angle of the shadow on the windowsill. I stood in front of it for a while. Long enough that I lost track of how long. 6 minutes. Her voice just behind me. I turned. She was holding a plastic cup of wine she hadn't drunk, wearing the same gray cardigan I'd seen the night of the drive, or one very like it. It's good, I said. You don't have to. The light is right, I said. That's the hard part. The colors are fine. The light is right. That's rare. She looked at the painting rather than at me. Most people mention the colors. Most people are avoiding saying they don't know what they're looking at, I said. Pause. Almost a smile. That's unkind. It's true though. Yes, she said. It is. She was quiet a moment. That's my kitchen. The window faces east. I looked at the shadow angle. Morning light, low autumn. Yeah. She turned to look at me then. How do you know the season? The angle. Summer morning light hits higher on the sill. This is October or November at the earliest. She studied me for a moment with an expression I couldn't fully categorize, something deliberate and quiet. I painted it from memory, she said. Why from memory? I don't like making things when people can see me doing it. There it was again, that quality she had of saying things plainly that opened onto something much larger than the words themselves. Danny arrived then, a cup in each hand, someone else in tow, slotting himself between us with all the spatial awareness of a golden retriever. You found it? It's brilliant, isn't it, Cal? I've been telling her for weeks it's brilliant. You tell me everything is brilliant, Nora said. This one actually is, I said. Danny pointed at me. Nora didn't look at me, but I saw the corner of her mouth move, just barely. The evening reorganized itself around Danny's social energy, and I didn't speak to her again. By the time I looked for her an hour later, she had already gone. I started running a different route on Thursday mornings. The new route went along the canal. The canal is in the east of the city. Her building is near the canal. I would like to be precise. I did not run past her building. I ran along the canal, which passes within 4 streets of her building, which is a geographically distinct thing, and I was aware of the distinction I was drawing and aware that the awareness itself was a form of information. I texted Danny to ask if she'd sold the painting. He replied, why? I said, just curious. He said, she never sells them. I put the phone face down on the kitchen counter and stared at the ceiling. I am a person who reads structural integrity for a living. I was not, at this point, doing a good job of reading my own. She texted me on a Tuesday. I'd had her number since Danny's birthday 2 years back, added to a group thread that had dissolved after the event, then never used. She apparently had mine the same way. The text said, Danny mentioned you have a survey near the canal next week. I know that end of the city reasonably well if you need lunch suggestions. I read it twice. Then a third time, not because it was complicated but because I was deciding something without entirely admitting I was deciding it. I replied, Tuesday is light. If you wanted to show me rather than just tell me. She replied within a minute, noon. Veer Street. I'll be outside. She hadn't asked if I was free. She'd assumed I'd be free, or that I'd make myself free. She was right on both counts. I noted this. I also noted that she'd had my number for an indeterminate amount of time before using it, which meant something, and I told myself firmly that I was not going to determine what it meant. The place on Veer Street was a Turkish restaurant. Small, warm, unnecessarily long menu, very good bread. She was outside exactly at noon in a dark green coat I hadn't seen before, and she ordered when we sat down with the ease of someone who'd been there many times, and she asked about the survey as though she'd been thinking about it since she texted. I told her about the warehouse conversion. Mezzanine added without proper structural sign-off, for bolts into concrete that wasn't rated for the load, owner blissfully unaware of what was above his head every time he walked under it. Does it frighten you? She asked. Knowing what's in the walls when other people don't. Sometimes, I said. More often it just feels like a responsibility. You think it's your job to tell the truth about buildings. Someone has to. Not everyone would. No, I agreed. That's why it pays what it pays. She turned her bread into smaller pieces, a habit I was starting to recognize. She did it when she was formulating something. Do you enjoy it? She said. Not in the professional sense. As a thing to spend your days on. I like being right, I said. That's not the same thing. No. But I don't hate it. Feels honest. I tell people true things about the places they're going to live. That seems, I don't know, worth doing. It is worth doing, she said. No qualification. What did you feel about teaching? I asked. The first 20 years, genuinely good. A satisfaction I didn't have language for until I didn't have it anymore. She paused. The last 10 years the system was built to make you absent from the actual work. You managed processes instead of teaching people. I couldn't make it mean the same thing. So you left. Eventually. She looked at me steadily. And partly I left because I wanted to find out what I was for, apart from being useful to something else. That sentence had a weight to it that I registered physically, something that settled in the chest rather than the head. Have you? I asked. Found out. I'm finding out, she said. It's slower than I expected. Is it frightening? She considered this genuinely. Less than I thought it would be, she said. I think I'd imagined it would feel like falling. It feels more like rebuilding from the footings, which is slower, but more solid. I looked at her across the table. The restaurant was warm and smelled like garlic and charcoal and the particular yeasty warmth of fresh bread. She was looking back at me with an expression that was calm and direct and something I didn't quite have a word for. You're not afraid of being seen clearly, I said. It came out more plainly than I'd meant it. She tilted her head, slightly left. What makes you say that? Most people are. You say things the way they are. I stopped. It's what? She said. Unusual, I said. Unusual, she repeated, as though testing whether that was the word I'd actually meant. It wasn't. We both knew it wasn't. I looked at the bread basket. She let it go. That was something else I noticed about her. She knew when to let a thing go, and she did it without making you feel she was doing you a favor. We were there for nearly 2 hours. I was back at the site half an hour later than I'd planned. I stood outside the warehouse for a minute before going in, not thinking about anything in particular, or more accurately thinking about something particular and not examining it. I went in and did the work. She texted 2 days later, how was the mezzanine? I told her, east side unsupported, exactly as suspected. Owner has 3 conversations ahead of him he won't enjoy. She replied, the east side is always the problem. I replied without entirely thinking, morning light exposes everything. Pause. Longer than usual. Then, yes. It does. I did not, as I said, examine what I was doing. We had coffee the following Thursday. Not planned, she was in the area, I was done early, we met at a place by the station where there were no seats and we stood at a counter by the window watching the street outside. 45 minutes. It felt like 20. She told me her sister had called. She apologized for how she said it. Nora said, not for the opinion itself. For the delivery. Is that enough? I asked. I think so. For now. She held her cup in both hands looking out at the street. She's frightened really? She thinks that when I removed the structure, the job, the routine, the usefulness of it, I'd have nothing left to stand on. And I'm standing, she said, simply. I can see that. She glanced at me sideways. Can you? Professionally speaking, I said, you appear load-bearing. She made the sound, the one I'd first heard in the car. The laugh that almost didn't arrive. This time it completed itself. Small, brief, entirely real. I moved my coffee cup across the counter for no reason. She watched me do it. I became aware that she'd watched me do it before, at the cafe, at the restaurant. That she'd noticed the habit. That she'd been noticing things about me with the same quiet attention I'd been paying to her, and that I'd been pretending not to notice her noticing. Not a great performance in retrospect from someone who notices things for a living. "Same time next week," she said when we were at the door pulling on our coats. As though we'd established a routine and were simply maintaining it. "I'm in Leeds Monday through Wednesday," I said. "Thursday then," she said. She left. I stood in the doorway of the coffee place watching the street she'd turned into, already empty of her, and I thought, this is a thing now. This is a thing that has become a thing, and I didn't decide that, it just happened, and I have to work out what I think about what I think about it. I went home. I ran the canal route on Thursday morning. I thought about the way she said Thursday then, not as a question. The Thursday after that it rained heavily and we stayed in the same cafe near her building for 2 hours. She brought a sketchbook. I hadn't asked to see it, she just put it on the table when she sat down face down, and I didn't touch it and didn't mention it and she didn't offer it. About halfway through the second hour she turned it over and pushed it across the table. "Studies for the big piece," she said. "The ambitious one." She didn't know if it was working. I looked at the pages slowly. They were all windows, different lights, different times of day caught in pencil and watercolor wash. There was precision to them that was different from the painting in the gallery. Less finished but more exposed. You could see her thinking in them. "These are good," I said. "They're working drawings." "Good working drawings," I said. "You're solving something in them." "What am I solving?" I looked at a particular page, a window at what looked like dusk, the light going out rather than coming in. How light leaves a space. Not how it enters. How it goes. She was very still for a moment. "I hadn't put it like that," she said. "I'm probably wrong." "You're not wrong," she said. Quietly. She took the sketchbook back. Closed it. Put it in her bag. "Cal," she said. I looked up. "Why do you run past the canal on Thursdays?" The cafe did its quiet thing around us. Someone laughed at the counter. The rain kept going on the window. "It's a good route," I said. She said. The same she'd used in the car on the first night, when I'd said something that was technically true and obviously insufficient. I moved my cup. She watched me move it. "You do that when you don't want to say something," she said. I looked at the cup. Then at her. "I know," I said. Pause. Long. "The kind that has something in it." Then the woman behind the counter dropped an entire tray of teaspoons. The sound was extraordinary, a cascading metallic clatter that lasted about 3 full seconds and caused everyone in the cafe to look up simultaneously, including both of us, and the woman behind the counter said something under her breath that was not polite and disappeared into the back. Nora looked at me. I looked at Nora. "I was about to say something," I said. "I know," she said. I heard the teaspoons. We both quietly let it go. But the shape of what I'd been about to say was there now, between us, present without being named. And she knew it. And I knew she knew it. And we sat with our drinks and talked about other things, and every word carried the weight of the thing neither of us had said yet. It was the gallery opening that moved everything forward. A proper gallery this time, white walls, proper lighting, real wine instead of plastic cups. Nora had 2 pieces in it. She told me about it the previous Thursday, offhandedly, as though mentioning it were less significant than the weather. I wore a jacket I'd ironed, which I noted about myself with some concern. Danny was there. He texted that morning to say he'd swing by. He arrived 40 minutes in, found me in front of one of Nora's pieces, and stood next to me doing what Danny does at galleries, which is stand with the concentrated expression of someone trying very hard to look like they're feeling something rather than just standing. "She's getting better," he said quietly after a while. "She was already good," I said. He looked at me with a sideways glance that lasted about 2 seconds longer than a normal glance. I kept looking at the painting. "How often do you two?" he started. "Thursday mornings," I said. "Coffee mostly. Sometimes lunch." Silence. "Right?" Danny said. "Is that—" I started. "I don't know yet," he said. "Honestly. I don't know. Let me think about it." That was Danny at his best, not performing a reaction. actually processing and saying so. I nodded. We stood in front of the painting for another minute. She seems better, he said. Since September. There's something different in her. I didn't know what it was. He didn't say it as an accusation. He said it the way someone says something they've been holding and needed to put down somewhere. I didn't respond. There wasn't a response that would have been honest without saying more than I was ready to say in a gallery with bad wine and my best friend. Nora found us eventually, or rather, we found her, in conversation with the gallery owner, and she introduced us both with the same easy manner she brought to everything. She was wearing something dark, a dress I hadn't seen, simply cut, and she had paint residue on her right wrist she'd missed in the cleanup, that same rust brown, because apparently that was just a permanent condition of her existence. Danny gave her a long hug. She let him, the way a person lets someone love them when they've given up arguing about it. Then he got pulled away by someone he knew, and it was just her and me standing in front of her second piece. A larger one, a canal scene in gray and green and silver, the light on water at what looked like early morning. The canal? I said. Near my building, she said. East Bank or West? She looked at me. Why? Shadow placement, I said. The light in the water, it's coming from your left, which means East Bank, she said. You can see the exact spot if you run that route on a Thursday morning. I went very still. She held my gaze without difficulty. She was more comfortable in this moment than I was, which was apparently always going to be the case. Nora, I said. I walk there sometimes, she said. On Thursday mornings. Pause. I haven't seen you. I run early. I walk late. Another pause. We've been missing each other. The word missing sat between us, doing considerably more work than its 4 letters should be able to do. Yes, I said. Apparently. She looked at the painting. I started that piece in October, she said. The same week Danny asked you to drive me home. I looked at the painting. The light on the water. The particular gray-green of the canal in early morning. It's very good, I said. I know, she said quietly. It's the first one where I stopped apologizing while I was making it. November. A Thursday. The cafe near her building again. Our cafe, though I hadn't let myself call it that out loud. It was mid-afternoon, pale winter light doing its minimal best through the window. She'd been to a group show the previous weekend, a bigger one, a gallery with a proper reputation, and had had a piece in it that she'd mentioned the same way she mentioned most things. Briefly, toward the end of a conversation about something else. I'd asked about it. She'd said, it's sold. I'd said, which one? And she'd said, the canal piece. The gray-green one. Someone had seen it and wanted it. She'd gotten a message from the gallery on Sunday evening while she was making dinner, and she'd had to sit down. Why did you have to sit down? I asked. She turned her mug in her hands. Outside, the rain had settled into something fine and persistent and gray. The cafe was warm and quiet and smelled like it always smelled, coffee and wood and whatever was baking perpetually in the back. Because it was real, she said. Not just something I made in a room by myself that no one needed to engage with. Someone saw it and decided it was worth keeping. She paused. I didn't know it mattered that much until it happened. I thought I was past needing that kind of... She stopped. Proof, I suppose. That's not a small thing, I said. That's the whole thing. I cried, she said. Which was embarrassing. To yourself. I live alone, she said. So yes, just to myself. I looked at her. Something was making itself known in my chest. Not dramatically, just persistently, like a sound at the edge of hearing you keep almost identifying. I would have kept it, I said. It came out simply. No preamble, no framing. Just plain. She went very still. Not her usual composed stillness. A different quality, the stillness of someone who has just heard something they had been, without admitting it, waiting to hear. The stillness that comes before a decision. Cal, she said. Quietly. My name and nothing else, and it was enough. I know, I said. You know who I am, she said. Danny's mum, I said. Yes. I've been his mother for 35 years, she said. I know what that means. I know what it makes me. It doesn't make you anything, I said. Not to me. She looked at me for a long time. Long enough that I became aware of the cafe continuing to exist around us. The quiet, the rain, the radio in the kitchen, the slow afternoon. What are we doing? She said. Not accusatory. not alarmed. Just the question asked plainly in her way. I've been trying to work that out, I said, for about 6 weeks. And I think we're both being very careful, I said, about something neither of us has said. Pause. I'm not going to be easy to, she started. I know, I said. You don't know, she said. I'm set in ways I don't entirely know how to undo. I have a son who is your closest friend. I am, she paused. I am considerably more complicated than a Thursday coffee. I know that too, I said. And you're still here, I said. Yes. The silence that followed was the longest one we'd sat in. Rain on glass. Someone's teaspoon set down carefully. The warm dark wood of the cafe holding us. Then the couple at the table beside us, who'd been conducting their own quiet conversation throughout, knocked their sugar bowl off the table edge. It hit the floor with a dense ceramic clunk, sprayed granulated sugar across the tiles in a white fan, and rolled to a stop against my chair leg. We both looked at it. The man retrieved it with profound apology directed at the floor. His companion pressed her lips together. A waitress appeared with a cloth. I looked at Nora. Nora looked at me. And we both, quietly at the same moment, started laughing. Not loudly. Just genuinely. The kind of laughter that arrives because the alternative is something too heavy for a Thursday afternoon in a warm cafe. Perfect timing, she said when it had passed. Structurally speaking, I said, that was a load-bearing sugar bowl. She shook her head. But she was smiling, properly, fully, in a way I hadn't seen from her before and immediately wanted to see again. If that just hit you the way it hits me every time I tell it, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. People have been finding these stories from every corner of the world and I want to know your corner. Subscribe if you haven't. A new story lands every week. Now, let me finish this one. I called Danny that night. I'd been turning it over since I left the cafe, not whether to call but how to say it. There is no clean way to tell your best friend that you have developed genuine feelings for his mother. There is no phrasing that makes it uncomplicated. I tried about 6 different opening sentences on the walk home and scrapped all of them and eventually just dialed when I got through the door, coat still on, standing in my own hallway. He picked up on the second ring. What's wrong? He said it the way people say it when they only call each other with news. Nothing's wrong, I said. I need to tell you something. Pause. Then carefully, okay. I told him. Not everything, not the accumulated Thursdays, not the sugar bowl, not the specific weight of hearing her say I'm finding out about her own life and feeling it somewhere structural. Just the essential truth, that I'd been spending time with his mother. That it had become something I couldn't honestly call neutral. That before anything more happened, he needed to know from me directly, because he was my friend and the alternative was a thing I wasn't prepared to do. Silence. Long enough that I checked the line. Then Danny said, "How long have you?" "Since the gallery show," I said. "The first one. November last year." More silence. "Does she?" He stopped. Started again differently. Is this something she wants?" That was Danny. Not "how dare you." Not "this is strange." Just, is she okay? Is she happy? Is this something she chose? "I think so," I said. "I hope so. It hasn't been named. That's partly why I'm calling you." "Right." A breath. "Right." A longer pause. "She's had a hard few years, Cal. You know, the retirement, the thing with her sister, He stopped. "She doesn't let many people in. She's very self-sufficient, doesn't cover it. She's built her life to not need rescuing." "I'm not trying to rescue anyone," I said. "I know." Pause. "I know you're not." Another pause. "That's probably why he didn't finish the sentence. We sat on the line for a moment. "If you're asking for permission," Danny said, "that's not something I can give. She's not mine to make decisions about." "I'm not asking permission," I said. "I'm telling you. Because you're my friend and you deserve to hear it from me." Quiet. "She laughs differently," Danny said finally. "Since September. I noticed but I didn't know, I couldn't work out what had changed." He paused. "I thought maybe the painting was going well." "Maybe it is," I said. "Maybe it's both," he said. A longer silence. Then, "Don't be an idiot about it, Cal." "I'll try." She's going to be," he seemed to be looking for the word. "She'll be worth it. She'll also be, a lot. She holds things to a standard. I know. She held me to a standard my entire childhood and I turned out relatively functional, he said. So there's evidence it works. I almost laughed. Relatively functional. Don't push it, he said. I'm processing. A beat. I'll be fine. I just need. Take what you need, I said. Yeah. A breath. Yeah. Okay. He paused one more time. Cal? Yeah. She deserves this, he said. Whatever this is. She deserves something that's hers. He hung up. I stood in my hallway for a minute with my coat still on and the phone in my hand and something in my chest that was large and specific and not uncomfortable. I texted her. I called Danny. Pause. Then I know. He called me. What did he say? A longer pause. He said you were probably going to be irritating about this in the best possible way. I smiled at my phone. Then he's not wrong. Another pause. Then, do you want to come for dinner on Saturday? I'll cook. Fair warning, I'm better at painting than cooking. I'll bring something, I said. Don't bring wine. I have wine. What then? Bread, she said. Good bread. The rest I can manage. I showed up on Saturday with a sourdough from the bakery 2 streets from mine that I'd been thinking about since Thursday. She opened the door in an oversized linen shirt with dried paint on the left cuff, rust brown always, and looked at the bread with the expression of someone grading work. Good choice, she said. I was nervous about it, I said. She looked up at me. About the bread? About everything, I said. She held my gaze for a moment. Then she took the bread from me, stepped back and said, Come in, Cal. I did. The flat was warm and slightly chaotic in exactly the right way, paintings everywhere in various stages of finished, books stacked in places books weren't quite meant to go, a good lamp in the corner making the sitting room into something amber and close. The kitchen window faced east, just as she'd painted it, and even in the evening the quality of the space was exactly what she'd captured. She'd gotten it right because she'd been looking at it honestly for years. We ate at a small table by that window. Fish and tomatoes and something with lemon that she presented with the disclaimer the oven runs hot and I don't fully trust it, and which was, despite this, genuinely good. I told her so. She said nothing, which I'd learned was Nora for pleased. We talked easily, about the new piece she was working on, about a building I'd surveyed that week with a seller the owner didn't know existed, about Danny, about a book she'd read twice. After dinner we sat with tea and the lamp and the rain outside and the easy quiet that had been the foundation of everything between us from that first night. Can I see it? I asked. The new piece. It's not finished. When it is. She looked at me steadily. The lamp made the light warm and specific and cast shadows that fell exactly like morning light from the east at a different angle, and I thought, she paints what she lives in. She paints truth. Yes, she said. One word. The same word as the first time, same weight, same certainty. As if she'd already been in that place and had simply waited for the question to arrive. That was how it started, properly. With bread and fish and a good lamp and one quiet word. The following April she finished the big piece and hung it in the sitting room, 1.5 meters wide, a sequence of windows and different lights, morning through evening. She stood back and looked at it with the critical expression she brought to everything she made. It's not quite right, she said. I looked at it for a long time. The light moved through it in sequence, east morning gold, flat midday white, the copper of late afternoon, the gray-blue of dusk. It was the best thing I'd ever seen her make. It's the best thing you've made, I said. You haven't seen everything. I'm aware, I said. Still. She sat down on the sofa beside me and we looked at it together in silence, and it was the best kind of silence. The kind that doesn't need anything added to it. 14 months on from the rainy drive, a Sunday morning in her kitchen. I was making eggs in a way that had gradually evolved over the preceding months from competent to ambitious to, on this particular morning, experimental in ways I hadn't planned. She was at the table reading, a mug of tea going cold beside her, and Danny had been for dinner the night before and left his jacket on the chair as he reliably did. He texted at 8:15, "Is my jacket there?" I photographed it. "Send it back." He replied, "You two are genuinely unbearable." I showed her. She read it, looked at the jacket, looked at me. "He's not wrong," she said. "No," I agreed. She went back to her book. I rescued the eggs. The proposal was in October. Nearly 2 years from the night of the drive, almost to the week, because apparently I have a tendency to return to the same coordinates. We were walking along the canal, Thursday morning, clear and cold. The heron was in its usual position on the east bank, still as only herons are still, which is to say completely motionless in a way that looks like a choice. She stopped. She always stopped for the heron. It knows something, she said. It's a heron, I said. That's what someone who doesn't know would say. I looked at her. The canal was silver in the late October light. She was watching the bird with that small tilt, head barely left, listening for whatever it is she always listens for. Rust-brown paint on her right wrist she'd missed. Green coat. Gray morning. The most structurally sound person I'd met in considerable time. Nora, I said. She turned. I'd like to keep doing this, I said. All of it. Indefinitely. And officially. She looked at me. The heron didn't move. That's not a romantic proposal, she said. No, I said. But it's accurate. And I thought accuracy might count for something with you. 2 seconds of quiet. The canal moved. A leaf crossed the surface slowly from right to left. Yes, she said. Same word. Third time. Each one in the same register, settled, certain, as if she'd been standing in that answer already and had only been waiting for me to find my way to where she was. The heron, at that precise moment, opened its wings and lifted off for no observable reason and moved east in a long slow arc over the water. We watched it go. Told you, she said. It knows things. I will never concede that point, I said. I know, she said, and took my hand. She tells people we met when Danny asked his friend to drive her home in the rain. I tell people she asked to be taken somewhere private on the first night, and that I've essentially been doing that ever since. She says, it was a cafe. Around the corner. I just didn't want to go upstairs yet. I say, and now? She says, now I have considerably less objection to going upstairs. I say, that's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. She says, the bar should concern you. It doesn't. If you made it to the end, thank you. Genuinely. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I read every single one and every location surprises me. If this story found you at the right time, subscribe. A new one arrives every week. I'll see you in the next one.